All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have Tracy Nelson. Tracy Nelson is an iconic roots singer located in Nashville who burst into the rock and roll scene in the mid-'60s as the lead singer of the San Francisco band Mother Earth. She wrote and recorded a tune called Down So Low that has become an instant classic and has been re-recorded by legendary singers such as Etta James, Linda Ronstadt, and Cyndi Lauper, just to name a few. And two more quotes to amplify her legend. Tracy Nelson proves that the human voice is the most expressive instrument in creation. The Rolling Stones said that. A bad white girl, Etta James, said that. Like and subscribe. I said that. I don't know, it's starting to sound like a Bob Dylan bit now. But anyway, we get into her story with Etta James in her conversation. We also talk about Tracy's new record, Life Don't Miss Nobody. This is her first studio record in 10 years, and the lineup is ridiculous. Joining her on this record is Willie Nelson, Charlie Musselwhite, Irma Thomas, Marcia Ball, Jontavious Willis, Mickey Raphael, and Terry Hanck. A legendary lineup, and we're going to listen to a track off that record. This is the title track, Life Don't Miss Nobody. Life Don't Miss Nobody off the album Life Don't Miss Nobody by Tracy Nelson. This one was kind of hard to pick a tune to listen to because there was so many amazing features, but we talk about this song a lot, particularly during the conversation, so I thought for listener context we would go with this one. Definitely do yourself a favor and check out the rest of the record with all the amazing features. It's available on all streaming platforms and wherever you get your music. I'm excited to share this conversation. Tracy's the real deal. This was an inspiring conversation, and it's amazing to pick someone's mind who not only got to hang out and work with blues legends, but also country legends and rock legends, and not just being in there and being around and trying to scratch at the surface for influence, but who is really in it, making music with Willie Nelson and Charlie Musselwhite and hanging out with Muddy Waters and encountering Jimi Hendrix, and this is all stuff we get into in the conversation. But before we get to any of that, a few things I got to cover. If you're new to this podcast and you enjoy my candor and banter, and you're like, I bet his music's okay, I play in a band called C Level Letter C Dash. We're a funk punk reggae rock group based out of Cleveland, Ohio. We take acoustic 12-string guitars and run them through Marshall amps and have a high energy performance. We got a couple gigs coming up for those who are in the Ohio area. First up is July 14th, opening up for the Bumping Uglies at the West Side Bowl in Youngstown, Ohio. The second of which is August 17th at the Rock Hall, playing outside on the big stage with a Mellow Man Funk. We would be honored if you guys would join us at any one of those gigs. Also, before we get to this talk, if you can like, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Tracy and sharing their insight with you. Now, without further ado, here we go. Here's my talk with Tracy. And I also found a lot of through line, most likely not intentional, but kind of comparisons to The Roots Are Deep, or Deep Are the Roots.
Deep Are the Roots.
And one of which being you played guitar on this one.
Right. That's the only time I've ever played guitar on record until now.
Yeah, and
took a little woodshedding, I got to tell you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with a backing band, like backing bands like you've had up through all these other records, I get it. And the sing and play, it takes a limitation from one to the other. But what kind of inspired the pick up the guitar again?
My mate Mike, who co-wrote and came up with that expression, "Life Don't Miss Nobody." He's been using it as long as I've known him. He just said, you need to play instruments on this record. You need to show people that you can do a lot of different things. And I started out on a 12-string. I bought a Stella 12-string at a yard sale when I was in high school because I read that that's what Leadbelly played.
Yeah.
And, it was killer. I mean, those were terrible guitars, and but man, did I build up my arm strength and calluses doing that. And then I switched. I got a nice little Martin uh, around that time, so I switched over to that. But and for the next few years, I was a folk singer, and I played in little coffee houses and things, playing guitar and accompanying myself. But when I started doing rock and roll, it didn't really translate the folk guitar style. But on this record, there was a song that just, absolutely cried for it. So that's why I decided to, to play on one of the songs in this record. Actually, two tracks of the same song.
It's funny. Like I mostly play a 12-string too, and it's weird because like people that kind of jump on from guitar or from 16 to 12-string, they kind of like get weirded out because it's bigger, even though it's easier. You know what I mean? It's like you're just pushing down 2 strings. So like kind of going from the Deep Are the Roots, like going into that record and listening to I found some of your chord choices really interesting. And this might be digging really far back, I know, but you did a cut of "Baby Please Don't Go," and I've heard that song a lot. But you do these instead of just like a 7 chord, it's more like I don't even know what type of chord it's like a luscious. It's like a finger picked chord.
Well, that was my forte in the day, was finger picking.
Okay.
So, and I can't remember, I had a guitar player on that record and I played a lot of guitar. So I haven't listened to that record in an awful long time. I probably should. So I'm not sure, if I played on that, but, yeah, I mean, I think I did, because that used to be part of my show, my set in my folk show. So yeah, so I was just, I was doing finger picking with it, and I probably was in open tuning.
Oh, okay.
I did a lot of open tunings, E, D, G, C, and so yeah. I mean, that's you're referencing stuff.
I know. I'm sorry.
Barely in my memory bank, but I'm delighted to have you go back to that.
Oh, it's a fabulous record. And I guess so. Charlie Musselwhite, who's on the new record and on that record, like, was he like showing you these type of tunings, or who was like kind of introducing you to that idea?
No, okay. The guitar player on the record was this guy named Peter Wolf, not the guy with Jay Giles.
Okay.
But a psychology major at the University of Wisconsin. But I started taking guitar from him when I was a senior in high school, and he taught me all that stuff, open tuning, and also kind of turned me on to, the older blues stuff. And I think I had heard Robert Johnson, but he had me going back and listening to Charlie Patton and Lightning Hopkins and John Hurt, and so yeah, I'm that was all his influence. He was a great guitar player, but when I saw him some many years later in New York, and he was a shrinker. So,
well, it's interesting because your intention at that time, right, when you were going to college, wasn't to make music your career, right?
Nah.
So
do you have the actual album? Deep Are the Roots?
I don't have the actual album. No.
I mean, did you see the liner notes?
I know you said social work, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's sort of yin yang, sort of the same thing, being a musician and being a social worker.
Yeah. I mean, it's both. There's a lot of kind of rough avenues in both careers.
Mm-hmm. And guiding and guidance.
Yeah.
And wrangling,
to get
herding cats.
Yeah. Yeah, and like so that kind of makes sense. Maybe why you guys buddied up. He wasn't looking to make it a serious thing either.
Yeah, and I really, I mean, I'm not sure how I knew at the time, as a freshman in college, how onerous the music business was, but I had a real inkling of that from the beginning, and I just didn't want to go there, and I didn't want to make music a business. So I tried a lot of other things, including some volunteer kind of social work, and that's one of the things I wanted to mention to you.
Mm.
And when I exhausted every other possibility, then okay, well, I guess this is what I need to do. Also, I moved to California and worked in a record store and heard all the bands that were making, big money that were, to my mind, just awful. And so I thought, well, God, I mean, certainly I can at least do that. But what I wanted to mention to you about working with autistic children, when I quit school, and this was in '64, so this is before there was very much attention or knowledge about that whole issue. But
Right.
I volunteered at a daycare center for they were all referrals from within the court system in some way or another. Either they were problem kids or their parents were problems. So, and there was this one little boy named Michael who was, unreachable. I mean, he just walked around on his tiptoes. He never engaged. You couldn't get him to focus his attention. No one then knew, any of the tools. And I used to play my guitar and sing for the kids before they went down for their naps.
Yeah.
And one day I played Michael Row the Boat Ashore. And Michael all of a sudden zoomed in. He looked straight at me. He sat down, sat still, really listened, engaged, reacted. I mean, it was just miraculous. And it let me know. And I had another experience many years later in Scotland. The keyboard player I was using over there worked in a school for profoundly disabled kids. And he had us do a show for them. And there was a little boy that in a wheelchair who, just was could not control any of his limbs or, just really profoundly disabled. And when we started playing, he stopped moving. He began moving with the beat. He engaged, and the people there said, "We've never seen him do that." And so it's just that I'm sure there's a scientific, neurological explanation for this, but I prefer to think it's kind of magic.
Well, it definitely is magic. It definitely is magic when you see someone who's to your perception and to everyone else's like kind of unengaged start to engage in that way, and it's
music
yeah.
that does it. I'm sure that with Michael, because the song said the name Michael.
Yeah.
Can you find enough songs with people's names in them to engage the kids you're working with?
Well,
I mean, there's Mary, there's Michael, there's John, there's any number of names that could.
Right. You could fit there.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of it is kind of catering to what intrigues them, or you can just with any of those, you can any one syllable name you can kind of make work, right?
Yeah. Well, or any number. Let's say I did Cooper Roll the Boat Ashore from my great nephew.
Yeah.
And
that works.
and the Hush Little Baby.
Oh yeah.
You can put in any name really, because you can, you don't have to say little. You can say Hush, Marjorie Ann.
Yeah.
I mean, so whatever works.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Like our I guess to kind of dispel the music, the neuro a little bit. Our brains like to predict that, like the rhythm makes us think in a different way, and our brains are predicting what's about to happen, and then it's kind of like shifting focus, which is really fascinating. And you see it like, I guess in a broader context, like James Brown music. It's all one chord. Our brain knows that groove, right? You just hear what he's saying on top of it. And it's equally magic knowing a little bit of the neurochemistry behind it. And like, so that makes us focus more. And it's so cool, and it feels so good to be able to connect with someone like that in that way. Because some of the pre-K kids I work with would be a lot of stuff like that.
Let me try. There's something. I hope I don't lose you, but I'm
No,
gonna
it's fine.
decline. Okay. All right. You still there?
Yep, still here.
All right.
I always get when it gets to that same button switch over. I always mess it up.
Yeah. No, what do I do? I am not very ergonomically digitally adept. I fortunately have a younger mate, and otherwise I'd be hopeless. I mean, this is the whole world that is just beyond my capabilities. So,
But I mean, I've heard in interviews you being kind of a front runner of using the internet to make music with like Marcia Ball and I forget if it was Ebony and Every was the record.
Ebony and I, Ebony and Irony,
Irony, I got it back.
which was a terrible mistake.
The emailing or the album?
The title, because you know, invariably it would be referred to in articles and interviews as Ebony and Ivory. So it just confused everybody, and nobody quite got it. So, but I haven't really done much digitally, recording wise. I mean, we on this record we did a lot of remote stuff, where they do it somewhere else, and then you could. That's all marvelous. I mean, I love that, but without my producer engineer, I couldn't have ever done any of that stuff. And Marcia and I have written together, but via email and the phone. That's as far as at least I can get, and I'm not. I think Marcia's a lot more on that stuff than I am.
Was it so like the kind of before leaving the idea of Charlie Musselwhite to hop back for a second? So like,
oh yeah,
kind of like working with it's one. It's so cool to kind of have like on your first record and most recent record, like kind of, especially with everyone.
50 some years in between.
Right. So and I get it's a 50 some years in between, but what are some like kind of like I guess songwriting, music playing, like some like music kind of philosophical lessons, any of that comes to mind like from Charlie Musselwhite and from working with Charlie Musselwhite?
Well, he was my boyfriend briefly.
Okay. So maybe there's more than
yeah. When I went to Chicago to do the Prestige record, the Deep Are the Roots record, I knew I wanted harmonica. I brought my keyboard player and guitar player from Madison. But I knew we wanted a harp player, and I knew about Paul Butterfield. So I was kind of down on Wells Street or someplace, just checking out clubs and trying to find Paul Butterfield. And I ran into another friend of mine from Madison who played in a band with Michael Bloomfield and Charlie. And when I told him I was looking for Butter, he said, "Oh no, you want this guy Charlie Musselwhite? He's the real deal." So we found him and hired him. And then we kind of got friendly, and I used to go down most weekends or a lot of weekends, to see Charlie and listen to him play. And he played a lot with Johnny Young in this one club on the South Side, and then we'd go to the other clubs. And so we got to hear Wolf and Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy and Junior Wells and just everybody that was playing during that time. And Charlie, just somehow, I mean, the real blues guys were a little leery of some of the young white kids, trying to play blues, but they loved Charlie, and he could go anywhere and just be welcomed. And so we went to all these places and sat and chatted with the old blues guys. I mean, they were all pals with Charlie. I'll tell this story because I've told it a million times. But I was 19 and had a fake ID because you had to be 21 to get into the clubs down there.
Right.
And so I borrowed this girl who lived in my dorm named Marion Shulo. And she had dark hair, short dark hair, but they didn't if you just showed them something in those days, they didn't care that much. So we were at Pepper's going to see Muddy Waters. The bouncer's looking at my ID. Otis Spann walked up and said hi to Charlie, and Charlie started to introduce me, and I elbowed him and I said, Marion Shulo, nice to meet you, because the bouncer was still holding my ID that said I was Marion Shulo. So then we went into the main room and sat down with Muddy and Otis Spann. And Charlie introduced me to Muddy by my real name. And Otis said, well, I thought her name was like Mary or something. And so we explained, no, I was 19, I had a fake ID, blah, blah, blah. The next set, Muddy got up, second or third song in, said, I'm going to do this song for Charlie's Woman, and did 19 years old.
Oh, man,
I mean, that is a pretty fucking cool memory.
That's so cool. So that
anyway, that was Charlie's influence, was just, going around and taking me to hear these guys, in their heyday at home.
Yeah.
This was before Bill Graham brought them into national awareness by putting them on the Fillmore, and this was like they were just the house bands at these different clubs on the South Side.
That's like because all those like Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters, all these legends of blues, just like how you're saying, to be able to see them in their heyday, but also in kind of a relaxed state. You know what I mean? Like
kind of in their natural state as opposed to their showbiz state.
Right. Like that's.
Although I can't. I mean, I shouldn't say that because I can't say I ever saw Muddy or Wolf anywhere else where they weren't just exactly what they were. But
that's so cool. Like, and to have a guide, to have someone that's like she's cool.
Yeah, exactly. And a little Norwegian white girl. And Charlie, was a white boy from Mississippi, but he totily bonded and his identity was just absorbed and accepted. So, have you ever met Charlie? Well, he's just, to this day, I mean, he's just a charming man. His whole demeanor and manner is so lovely and nice and non-threatening. I mean, he's, he just was a great person to hang with, and for a lot of reasons.
Well, I can't imagine being able to fit into a community at all without having some of those characteristics, and to be the want to share it, to be like, hey, check this out. This is cool. You know what I mean? Like, it's a certain type of person that finds this magic and wants to share it with everybody and everyone to know, and like everyone's cool with someone being able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think I would. I'd drive down Chicago from Madison, park on the South Side, wherever I could park. We started out where Charlie usually played at Rose's and Kelly's, and walk through the neighborhoods, and nobody ever said boo to me. This was before. Black people felt comfortable with being angry, but also these were neighborhoods, people on their sometimes they holler at me, hey, little white girl, where are you going? But it was all very good natured. The only people that gave me any problems at all were the cops, because they couldn't figure out what the fuck I was doing there. But and sitting in the clubs and chatting with the wives of the, it was all very, very open and accepting. That ended a few years later. I mean, I was just blessed to be able to, tap into that at the exact time that I did.
Yeah, that's so what kind of musical lessons just from observing and being around or I guess even kind of performance or how someone would handle a crowd. Is there anything that off the top of your head that comes that you find yourself referring to all the time?
Nope. I'll tell you what, because at the time I still didn't have any intention of being a serious musician.
Yeah.
And secondly, I just, I was just absorbing it. I was just enjoying it. And I didn't get clinical about it at all. That's what you lose later on, is this ability to just sit and listen to music without thinking, okay, how can I use this, or how would I do this, and anymore, the only music I listen to is music I would never do myself.
Yeah.
because,
Like what?
because well, old time gospel music, black
Okay.
gospel music.
Hmm.
Uh, I am so into the whole Fania catalog.
Yeah.
The and that's on heavy rotation in my truck. Um, and I did try to have something a little Latiny on the record. That Life Don't Miss Nobody. I kind of tried to go there, but I just would never try to totally replicate salsa music. So that that's what and jazz. Although I still would like to try to do some a jazz record. Um, in the early Blue Note stuff, that's what I listen to, because it's not something I have to try to extract and use.
Hmm. I totally relate to that. Like, I
Yeah.
totally get that. I find myself listening to people talking more and more than the music because of that. And like, that I guess that makes that time even more like impactful, like in that way, like the kind of set that, like that, I don't even know what you would call it, not nostalgia, but that like just this is when it was fun type deal before
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
before what was that
And
run? Like,
and no, and yeah, or that's a great song. How might I do it? Or, well, I'm going to cop that vocal lick, or so that just it. So, in answer to your question, it just didn't enter my mind, thankfully, at the time.
gotcha. So like after experiencing that, you moved to San Francisco, right? And that's when Mother
Hmm.
Earth starts.
Hmm.
And like that's because that's like a very going through those records. It's a very interesting, at least at the first three records, an interesting blend of like um, that influence clearly, like this is blue influence and like this kind of real deal influence, and then like a bounce between like kind of like a psychedelic songwritery song from the other singer in the
From
group.
Powell.
Pal, yeah, like it was an interesting blend between the two. Was
It
this?
was. That's what I loved about that band, and I was very, very sorry when Powell left the band. A lot of people just didn't connect with Powell, but he was just fucking brilliant. He was so quirky. I loved it. I mean, he would come on stage with those day glow colored ear protectors
Yeah,
that guys on the tarmac at airports wear.
yeah.
And he would, even then he was cognizant of protecting his
He's a
hearing.
smart guy. That's-
Yeah, and he was a brilliant songwriter. I mean, his lyrics are just beyond poetic, and a great harmonica player. But he was, he didn't. I didn't really fit the mold, but everybody was looking for the next Janis, so I was lucky. But people just didn't pick up on his brilliance, and I've always been sorry about that. And he passed a couple of years ago, so
oh.
um, that's kind of it.
One thing that strikes me is ahead of his time from the rip is like I think the
Yeah.
first song on the first Mother Earth record, which is like about Marvel superheroes.
Wait, is that on that Marvel group? Is that on the first one or the second one? I
I,
can't remember.
I thought it was the first one. I could be
You,
getting
you,
them
I
mixed up.
think you'd know better than I, because you may have looked at this early since I have. Yeah, yeah.
Like, hopefully that Marvel picks that one up and some revenue starts coming your all way because that's
Well,
awesome.
it's all Powell's wife now. So, uh, um, yeah, and my only response to that song to Powell was, "You didn't talk about Plastic Man. Plastic Man was always my favorite superhero, and he was so underappreciated."
Oh, that's awesome. Like,
But living with the animals is brilliant.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Kingdom of Heaven is Within You is just heartbreakingly beautiful. I mean, he was brilliant, but like many, many, many brilliant, artists, nobody ever really heard him.
but his like the balance between the two of you in that group, I think really makes Mother Earth a very unique band for that time. Because
Yeah.
like I was looking at some of the like you guys played with like the Dead and Jefferson Starship and like I think it said Hendrix at one point or shared a bill or something like that. But like
Yeah, I was on stage with Hendrix. I mean, a
okay,
couple of.
well, a couple times. Wait, can you dive into that a little bit? What?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
One was a festival, a huge festival, and I think that we played early, he played way late. I don't even think I ever saw him. Another was this festival in uh, at Devonshire Downs outside of L.A. It was a a racetrack, and it's called if you go to YouTube, there's some video of that, just like Tracy Nelson or Mother Earth at Devonshire Downs or something. Um, it was a huge festival. They called it Newport 69 because they didn't do the Newport Folk Festival that year. I think the Jazz Fest, there were some riots, and Newport said, no, you're not doing it this year. But and Hendrix was on the bill. And at the end of the last night, it was this big, huge jam. And so I and my three backup singers were off to the side doing steps and singing backup I think we sang it with Buddy Miles on Mustang Sally, and sang along, with, that was as close as that connection got. I actually spoke to Hendrix once, wanting to get to know him.
Yeah.
And it was a dismal failure.
Yeah.
Because, he's standing there, I'm talking to him, but was just somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
So,
oh, bummer.
Yeah, really.
Was that kind of like so? But like, one thing, like going through like all the tunes, I'm like, how do you guys pick a set? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because it had to be a balance between the two tunes, and like,
yeah.
Was it just kind of doing that A and B in it and seeing what the audience react to, or do you guys have like?
No, I think it was more the songs themselves, how they, like you don't want too many slow songs together, too many fast songs together. You figure out where Powell songs fit into that, and just to try to have a balance both stylistically and I mean, groove wise, and our two very different styles. So I don't remember really how we figured all that out, but we did.
That's so cool though. Like, was that type of scene more accepting to kind of like stranger groove shifts than maybe like a blues scene?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Even though Powell was really, complicated and deep and a little weird, we never played. He came out of Texas and he loved blues, so we never tried to sound like like the psychedelic bands with whatever the fuck that sounded like. I avoided listening as much as I could, but but even so, and the fact Bill Graham liked us, put him on his stage often, and if Bill Graham put you on the Fillmore stage, people came open to whatever you were doing. He just established this reputation of putting stuff up that was cool. I mean, and in fact, if you were on the Fillmore stage, you were automatically cool. So even the R&B stuff, they reacted to probably not as well early on as Powell stuff, because there's like one other R&B band in town, the Loading Zone, and they were great. Linda Tillery is a great singer, but people wanted to hear that weird, endless, noodling, meandering,
Yeah,
being music.
That's fascinating. Like, one, it's cool that I don't think that exists anymore, where a venue is just going to bring someone up and people are like, all right, they're good. I don't think it works like that anymore, which is a bummer. Like,
well, that was Phil Graham's brilliance. I mean, I don't know how he did it. I don't know how he managed to get people to pay attention to what he was doing, but he just had that brilliant ability to put stuff out there that, that people liked and would accept. And, and a typical, I'm not sure if this is, precise, but I mean, precisely factual, but he would have Manitas de Plata, the, flamenco guitarist, Jimi Hendrix, and the Staple Singers.
Wow.
I mean, that kind of a combination of stuff. So he was brilliant.
That's it. That would be an incredible show. Oh my God. Like, but and also like, I don't know, I think it's to see the musical talent within each one of those genres. If you're only looking in one zone, you're not, you're missing a whole nother.
Well, these people are all high.
That's true.
So they're a lot more open-minded. Oh. But yeah, I mean, it somehow it worked. And the folks who just were dying to hear the Jefferson Airplane or Janice even, and she was more R&B than anybody else. But they still just, it's not like they would come. There were always 2 shows, so each act did 2 sets. And it's not like people would leave after they heard the act they wanted. They were going to stay and smoke more weed and be in dance and listen for the whole night. I never saw the crowd thin out. I haven't thought about that. But towards the end of the evening, there were still just almost as many people as when you started.
Wow, and like that is a feat within itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like trying to put together shows and bills, like it's always like, okay, it's going to thin out before, if you really want to headline, if you really want to be there.
Yeah, no, that's where I'm at these days.
People are going
festivals. I do not want to play late in a festival. I want to play, mid.
Middle's always the best.
Yeah,
middle's always the best.
Yeah.
So was kind of being like, it sounds like you didn't, but it sounds like you didn't partake in some of the shenanigans, like the partying and the smoking. But was it kind of the overwhelming amount of that kind of drove you out to back? Okay. And is that,
I mean, I smoked weed in the day. I quit smoking not long after I got to Tennessee because I discovered I was allergic to it. And I did a little acid, and that was about it. But when so I just, I was always a little apart from things because I just wasn't. I drank. I probably was loaded, sometimes from booze, but I just wasn't in that whole drug culture. And then when we started our first tour was when, shortly before that, it was when cocaine had hit the streets, and heroin was always there, but not so much a part of, where I was. It just was a whole culture and atmosphere that was just awful. So I was, when I got to Nashville and discovered Nashville, I was more than thrilled to settle here and not have to go back there. The whole band and my manager went back. We had an extra month left on this big farmhouse we rented when we did our first record here.
Yeah.
And so I just stayed, and it was spring, and the daffodils were blooming. It was just spring in Tennessee is lovely. And they went back to Berkeley, and my manager called and said the National Guard is camped on your front lawn. I mean, it was a part of Berkeley near where they were having the riots, and so I said, well, get a damn U-Haul, pack everything up, and everybody in the band agreed they would love to come and stay in Tennessee, except the 2 black members. They were not having it, and I understand perfectly. But so yeah, I mean, it was a logical and attractive move, unless you were just totally mired down in all the bullshit that was going on out there.
Gotcha. So it's almost like, in a weird way, the opposite of a kind of the Chicago scene in that sense, from San Francisco.
I'm not grasping you.
I guess because it seems like in Chicago, it seemed like everyone was very welcoming and very in the moment,
Hmm.
like where it sounds like San Francisco is getting a little heated and unwelcoming, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, and unwelcoming is that's a good term because um, there were a lot of bands. There were some good musicians out there within the psychedelic. Well, Steve Miller
Yeah.
went out there as a blues player and ended up, just totally immersing himself in that new kind of music. But so there were a few good musicians, but for the most part, they weren't very good. And yet they had this complete pointless arrogance where they just they didn't
I
deserve to have the
yeah.
kind of ego they had. And Nashville, like the South Side of Chicago, musicians here at that time, you know, this guy plays on, the Patsy Cline sessions. This guy paves your driveway. I mean, it's just was the job. I didn't run into one single bit of attitude from any of the musicians I met when we first got here. It was just night and day.
So like kind of were you like into country music prior?
Um, I didn't know that I was.
Mm.
In my folk act, I did a couple Hank Williams tunes. I did I did Folsom Prison. Don't ask me why. It's a little white Norwegian girl singing "I shot a man in Reno," um, and uh, and I loved Patsy Cline, and but I didn't really zero in on and uh, Killer. I'm having a senior moment here, honey. Jerry Lee Lewis. I actually heard Jerry Lee, play in a crappy little club after his downfall when I
Yeah.
was in college. But I didn't really think of that as a genre till I got to Nashville, of course, and then it was just slammed with it. And our Texas guys were all way into it, and um, so we just naturally kind of threw in some country songs, and then Pete Drake, God bless him, who played steel on the first record we did in Nashville, said, you ought to let me produce a country record on you. And I said, okay. And we got Mercury to give us some. I remember that our budget was $30,000, and I was embarrassed to tell Pete this because we were used to much much bigger budgets.
Yeah.
Pete said, $30,000. I could make 10 records for that. So I mean, it really was just a whole different deal. That country record flopped as a country record, but it's kind of maintained through the years.
It's a good record. And
Yeah,
like
I think so, but the country DJs didn't. They either thought I was black or they just said, well, "She don't sound country."
that's a like it's so was there like a during this earlier time in Nashville, was there like a kind of Charlie Musselwhite guide to this scene as well?
I'd say Pete Drake.
Pete was the guy. Okay.
Yeah, and he introduced he introduced me to Scotty Moore, who we did the country record at his studio, and we dragged him out of retirement to play on "That's All Right, Mama,"
That's awesome.
and the musicians in the band were just gobsmacked. Scotty Moore, my God, I don't know that I was that aware of him until then. I mean, I knew who he was, but just what a legend he was and what a guitar hero he was.
Yeah, yeah.
And we became friends. We had the same birthday,
Aw.
and so we stayed friends all through up until he died. And his wife would always have us over for on our mutual birthday and cook a big dinner. And Boots Randolph would be there, or DJ Fontana. It was a wonderful friendship that I just I can't believe that I was able to
That's so
make
cool.
it.
Yeah. So like that's incredible. Like One thing I find that's so fascinating about your career is like you on both ends of like it's not like one genre. You have all these different genres, all these different kind of roots music like country and blues, and it's not just like you're passing by. It's like you're hanging out with Muddy Waters and like Willie Nelson. Like it's as into the dirt in each of these genres and as you can get. And like and your music has never been bound by one genre that's represented in the music you make. um but it takes a certain kind of fluidity and balance and appreciation for each of these different like types of music, and like kind of hearing that you're listening to salsa and jazz, trying to not listen to the stuff I think is radiating of the musician and character that you've become through your career. Like, was there like, I mean, you started with classical piano, so it was like, is it acceptance, or is there like an excitement that you find in each one of these genres that has made you want to dive into it, or is it just that it's good music?
Well, it just, if it grabs me and it's something I feel like I can bring something to, then I try it. Um, my classical background was useless. I could learn to play a little blues piano, but like the guitar, the style I could play, and then when I got into R&B and blues, um, they didn't translate. So I quit. I quit playing pretty much. If I wrote a song, I'd usually play on it, but that was kind of the end of it. But just, I mean, I guess, I mean, like all people who are into music, your ear just hears something. There's no explanation. You just all of a sudden you glom onto it. So I don't know. There's never been anything real conscious about it. But I've always wanted to do a lot of different kinds of stuff. I did not like being, you know, categorized as a blues singer, which I was for a long time, even in the old Mother Earth days when I did almost no blues. If anything, it was, R&B, and I copped a million Irma Thomas songs. So it was that, New Orleans thing. But boy, it was so great to sing with Marcia and Irma again.
Yeah. Oh, that like so kind of like working to the bounce working with them. Like I grew up, my grandpa would play Marsha's music, so I was very familiar with her music, and then was delighted to dive
Did you
in.
say your grandpa liked Marcia's
Yes.
music?
Yeah. Yep.
How old are you?
I'm 32. But
That's up.
my grandpa was a blues guy, like
Uh,
and a jazz guy. So like even age abound, like whatever it may be, like I notice how rough that may sound.
no,
um
I'm sorry. It just, I've had waitresses come up to me in clubs and say, "Oh, my grandma loves your music," and it's just it's sort of cool when you think of it. I mean, the span, but
yeah.
uh, and on this record, the span, Jontavious, I think, is in his about 27,
Yeah.
and I'm 78. So what is that? 50 some years difference?
Yeah, how'd you meet him? Like, well, before
Yeah,
diving
I
into
said we
that,
were into something else there. So go ahead.
with Marsha and Irma, like working with them, like in you would send songs back and forth with Marsha, like kind of like I guess like as a musician, like writing together, I've always found to be kind of a complicated process. You get into such a you like you're this is what I gotta do, this is what I hear, record, rinse, wash, repeat, try to figure it out. But like palling up with them, what what kind of have you seen reflected in your music from working with them?
Well, Irma and Marcia and I both, this is true, both of us. Irma was the first singer we listened to that just, God, I have to try to do this. We just both loved her from, the beginning of Irma's career. Um, as far as writing together, I can't sit in a room with somebody and write. That just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I do some of it and then I send it to them or play it for, and it goes back and forth that way. But um, and I've written with Gary Nicholson, who's just the supreme songwriter in Nashville, and we've sat together and done that. But it's usually because I have something already I want to do, and then I throw it at this other person, and then they add their thing to it. But sitting like the songwriters who schedule an 11 o'clock appointment to get together at some office and write songs is just anathema to me.
Yeah.
But with Marcia, we did a couple songs just that way. I'd send her the lyric, she'd run with the lyric, then I'd give her kind of an idea of what I was thinking musically, and then she would just run with it. Where do you go when you can't go home was a very simple song about not having a fight with your boyfriend and not wanting to go home, to this Katrina anthem.
Yeah.
And Marcia, you throw something at Marcia and she will turn it into just some kind of wonderful gem. On the Sing It record, we all just came to the sessions with songs that we wanted to do. So that's how that kind of came together. I don't think there was only one song self-written on that record, and that was a song Marcia and a friend of hers had done. Most of them were standards, covers.
So, like, with that one, would you guys kind of take turns letting the other kind of run the session in a sense? Because, like, going through Sing It, like, the tune Sing It's so catchy. Like, was that original one or was that a cover?
No, that was it was original, but it was David Egan, who was this great songwriter. He died way too early, but he wrote several of the songs on the record. And I think the way it went is if whoever brought that song to the package kind of ran how it was going to go.
Okay.
And so if Irma wanted to do X song, then she'd do lead, we'd do backup, and that's kind of how that shook down pretty easily. It was amazing, given three egos, how little problem there was with that. I mean, it was just and just fell into singing harmony. It was almost like siblings who sing together. Where you just automatically know who's going to go where, and it just works out.
That's beautiful. Like, I did, like, because I imagine you guys all have a lot of respect for one another in that sense. So, like,
well, we were both in awe of Irma.
Right. Okay. So she was.
And there were times when we were on the road, when we toured the record, a couple of major tours, and that's the only time I've really done that. And Marcia and I would be, one of Irma's biggest hits was "Time Is on My Side."
Yeah.
And Marcia and I would be up there singing with her, and we just look at each other, and it's like, do you believe this? We were up here singing "Time Is on My Side" with Irma Thomas. I mean, it was just, mind-boggling.
That's incredible. That's so cool. Like, that's...
Yeah, it's those kind of experiences that, the music business is just crap from top to bottom. But you have a few of those experiences, and, it's the old cosmic carrot.
I like that. The cosmic carrot. It's like, well, that's success. Like, that, just being able to have friends like that and make music like that, and to be in awe and enamored and like moved in that sense. I can't find a better way to define like success in any type of career, or than that.
Yeah, that's a really nice thought. I'm gonna hold on to that one.
All right. I guess one last question, kind of on this record. You do a tune with Willie Nelson, and you've done a handful of tunes with Willie Nelson, but
I only did one. I threw one other
after the fire's done.
Yeah, and they put out a single of that, and the B side was they needed something, so I just sang on a song he'd already recorded. But it had been 50 years practically, but at least 40 years between records, and I just said to Willie, we ought to do this every 40 years after we finish this last one. But yeah, I mean that song, that was the only country hit I ever had. I mean, we got a country Grammy nomination for that song, and guess who won? The Pointer Sisters. So go figure that. But yeah, it was just time. I just had to sing with Willie again. I couldn't wait any longer.
Because I've seen a couple recorded performances. I guess I meant like there's a
Yeah,
video of you guys doing the Carter family and I forget the other.
Circle.
Yeah, Circle.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the Ralph Emery show.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
When Willie quipped, when Ralph asked if we were related, and Willie said we're actually the illegitimate children of Ozzie and Harriet.
But
Clever devil.
yeah, that's awesome. Like I guess I but you there's a comment and I can't remember where I read it on matching Willie's phrasing on this record on that you just put out. And Willie's got it's very subtle because it seems so naturally him, but like with a phrasing like that, did it come easily through all these years of working together, or did it come easily from like, or not easily? Did it come from like studious studying of how Willie's going to say the
No,
word and or
no,
whatever?
it came easily when we did Cold as Ashes. We actually recorded that together in the studio, but I'm sure I went back and redid to be closer to his phrasing when we sang together. Uh, um, yeah, I mean, it's sort of a Zen kind of a thing, you know. You just I kind of know where he's going to go, and I can't say that it was a one take thing. You know, Willie sang the whole song. Well, I wasn't sure what he wanted to do or not do, so I just said just sing the whole song. And then I went back in and put in the parts I wanted to put in, and then where we were singing together, I matched his phrasing, and I think I did it really well, and I don't recall it being that much of a chore.
Okay. I agree. I definitely think you did it very well. Like it's
It's
seamless.
so much fun because it's so out of the ordinary, so it's just it's kind of a fun ride, an adventure singing along with Willie.
And like I guess as far as like working as far because harmonies are hard for me. Like this is just the
Oh,
on the
I'd
side.
rather sing harmony. I'd rather
Yeah.
sing backup than sing lead.
Okay.
I mean,
Interesting.
that comes to me naturally. I think because um, growing up, my family sang together.
Yeah.
We each had a harmony part. So, my ear was tuned to that early on. But I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh no no no. That's
You were saying singing harmony is difficult for you?
yeah yeah. I find that it makes more sense that if you grew up doing it, that they'd be like that kind of comfort as like as in the group supporting everyone as opposed to hey look at me. And like my family wasn't that musical in that sense, so I didn't grow up with like like to learn to sing was like a uphill battle for me. Like I had to like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I had to like play a note on my guitar and be able to match it. Like guitar was much more fluent and like and I think much more comforting because it's not that this is me. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm playing Hendrix or whatever. There's a thing you can kind of hide behind an idealism that's there, and
Well, I
like
think it's a natural gift too, like any other talent or any
right.
other uh, ability. If it comes naturally, it's a lot easier than if you have to really learn it. It's very difficult for me to sing lead. Um, I have to put a lot more work into that than any time I sing harmony. I didn't sing backup on this record. I usually do. I get together with two other women and or men or whoever, and I didn't on this one, which I overdubbed a couple parts, but I really missed that because that's the most fun part is getting together with two other people that you love singing with and just and again it's kind of zen. Everybody knows where they're going to go if it's the right combination of people, and it's just so low pressure, and I just love doing it.
So it's finding that space and just kind of letting it happen. And
Hmm.
I can see with like backup vocals, it's kind of like the main vocal I imagine at that point's already recorded. So like
Sometimes,
okay
sometimes not. Sometimes I'll go back and match the backup. Like
Okay.
with if they do a phrasing I like better, or if we're in the studio and overdubbing back up, if they start doing something and they say, "Oh, that wasn't quite with the vocal," I'll just say, "Go with it. I'll fix the vocal." I have sung with singers where there's several singers where there are singers who just don't get the idea of it. Not that they don't get the idea of backup, but that they don't understand that when you're singing backup, you stay within a certain range, and that's makes you crazy, because they'll start singing what should be one part, then they'll go to another part, then you have to switch it down to the part they should have been on. So it's wonderful when it's people who really get it, really get how to do it.
So they're doing big leaps, shifting kind of lanes too quickly from.
Yeah, like
Okay.
if you're singing the low harmony, it stays in this certain range. Some singers will start on the low harmony and then end up on the high harmony, and so with four people, you end up with two parts, and that's not good.
Yeah, it's not full.
Yeah, exactly.
I and I so one more question, Tracy. I really appreciate your time.
I
And
appreciate your forgiving me for completely blowing it.
oh, it's totally fine. Like this, I've been excited to talk with you, and like it's life happens, no big deal. Like we're here now.
Life don't miss nobody.
Life don't miss nobody. We hit it. But I guess, and just kind of on this topic, and I imagine this is an ever changing thing. But to you, what is a good phrase?
What a good
Musically,
phrase,
yeah.
musically or lyrically.
I guess if both, because they're both kind of two different lanes of thought. But like musically, what's a good phrase? What sticks out to you to like I like that, or I want to emphasis more on that? And this can be as technical or not technical of a question as it needs to be.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have an answer for that, because phrasing is another one of those things that I'll be singing and I'll hit on something I really like, and then I'll say, okay, stay with that. Don't forget that. Now that I have a phone, I'll sing it. I'll be singing at home or whatever, and I'll do something I really like, and I put it into the phone. It's more a matter of doing it and then, digging it and retaining it. And musically, again, it's just what works in whatever context it's in, and really hits you and say, oh, that is really cool. But there's not a lot of thought that goes into it beforehand. It's usually after the fact.
Got it. So it's the Zen kind of capturing the moment type. I get it. All right, very cool. Well, Tracy, Life Don't Miss Nobody is an incredible record, and I'm super
glad. I love this record. I actually go back and listen to it, which I have almost never done with my other records. There's so little on it that I either wish I'd done differently or didn't do that I wish I'd done, that I can actually listen to it and enjoy it. Also, I've kind of got over that nitpickiness I used to have.
Yeah. I think that's a tough one to get over, because especially when you're, you know what I mean. Like I constantly go back. I'm like, I could have said the phrase better.
And it's just painful.
Yeah.
And you've heard it, when you make a record, you've spent hours and hours and hours listening to every little thing and zeroing in on it. So it's hard not to do that. But it may just be, with age and experience, it becomes a little easier as it goes along. And it's been 10 years since I put myself in that situation, so I kind of grew out of a lot of that too.
But you were still performing within those years, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And recording, but not solo projects. I did a lot of recording with other people.
So, but to put your whole self in front of it's a different thing. I get it. Well,
you got to really pay. You really got to pay attention and pay attention to detail. That's the hardest part of it.
I guess kind of going through the years with tracking stuff, is it? I'd imagine it gets easier, but is it easier to kind of accept that's the take? I don't need the drill anymore. I got it. That's it. Okay.
I doubt that we did on the tracking. I doubt that we did more than I don't think we did more than 2 takes on any song, but it was partly the musicians. They're just so freaking wonderful. And on my vocals, that was a little harder. I had to finally, either say, okay, I'm not going to get what I'm going for, or this is fine, or this is great, or the producer, whose ears I trusted, saying, you got it here. You don't have to, I'm a lot. God, when I think of those first records that we did, and we had huge budgets, and the amount of time we just spent going over and over and over and over. I can't believe we ever got a good track. So yeah, that's another thing you just grow out of. You just hit it. If it's good, fine. If you want to make it perfect, don't.
So I get it. Okay. All right. I get it. No, it makes sense because you can chase that wall of perfection, and then it's going to be as good as it's going to be that day. And
or probably ever. And the more you chase it, the more you lose.
Yeah. Are you planning to tour this at all? Are you planning to hit it? Are you going to
come? Oh, my management people seem to think I will. I kind of have to. Going on the road is not. I don't mind going out for a weekend, a couple times a month.
That's the way to do it.
I will ever want to do. So I'm hoping that's what we'll do. Is just a couple of weekends every so often.
Well, I hope to catch you in Cleveland at one point.
I can't. The last time I was in Cleveland, we played a club. And we opened for Shaka Khan, actually for Rufus.
Dang,
that was a fucking long time ago.
Yeah. What project was that? Was that with the Sing It?
No, it was long before that. That was Mother Earth Days.
Wow. Opening for Shaka. That's so sick.
Yeah, it was pretty. That was pretty cool.
Oh, I'm trying to even think of where that would have been. It's probably was that Agora?
Well, it would have been before you were born, probably.
Right. But I mean, if it was like something like the Agora would sound like something like a big venue like that with a bill like that. Jeez. But
did you say Agora?
Yeah, the Agora. I'm trying to think.
Oh, that may have been it. Was that around for a long time?
That's been around for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, that rang a bell. The other thing I remember about it was going out for a walk after sound check, and it was raining. And when I came back in, my face was burned. It was like acid rain. It was before they cleaned any of that up. And
oh my God!
And I've done a couple little things at the Hall of Fame. I did a Bessie Smith tribute many years ago, but that was about it.
Yeah, that would make me.
I think we played in Cleveland with the Sing It tour. Remember that? That's probably the last time I was there.
Acid rain would turn me off from a city. I don't blame you.
Well, it didn't occur to me. I felt like I had a sunburn.
Oh my God!
But it was like winter and it was raining, so that didn't make any sense at all.
That's crazy.
Fortunately, I have the tough Norwegian skin, so it didn't do any lasting damage. But...
Oh wow! Oh, I guess I'm sorry. I keep coming up with more. Ella covered one of your tunes, and
what?
Ella Fitzgerald, right? With Down So Low.
No, Etta James.
Etta James, god damn. I knew it. I'm not.
No, Yin Yang.
No, it's completely different. I messed that one up.
There's a great. No, it's not. In fact, I'm thinking of a different story, and it's not Ella and Etta. It was Etta and Sarah Vaughan. But anyway, yeah. Etta Down So Low. I met her shortly after she'd recorded it. Her horn player, they played at the Exit Inn here in town, and her horn player came up to me outside and said, "Would you like to meet Etta? She just cut your song." I said, "Yeah, I know. Boy, I'd love to meet her." So I went backstage and Etta and the horn player said, "Etta, this is Tracy Nelson. She wrote that song Down So Low you just cut." And Etta says, "I hate that fucking song. It's the hardest fucking song I ever tried to do. I hate this."
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh wow! So
that was Etta. I mean, I got to know her in the past. She called me a bad white girl in her biography. So that's right at the top of my promo stuff.
That's right up there with as far as the success is measured. I don't think like
Yeah, really.
but I guess because it's also been covered by Linda Ronstadt, like and a bunch of other artists. But like, kind of, do you
Cyndi Lauper?
Cyndi Lauper,
Cyndi
yeah.
freaking Lauper. I mean, yeah, that song. What was the Saturday Night Live thing? Was it boxing been very good to me? I think it was, or anyway, that song been very good to me.
But like, do you ever listen to these covers and learn something new?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Linda's cover, I copped a lick off of it that I still do to this day when I still do the song. It's just the way she kind of, did a 3-note chromatic walk up to another note. Etta, I loved what she did. I wasn't particularly influenced by it, but Linda's version, I actually picked some stuff up from.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible. That has to be like, to be able to pull from that is so cool and so inspiring. And that's the way, that's like the Zen approach to it. And that's what I think is so inspiring about you.
Bonnie Raitt cut one of my songs. And
yeah.
She said, I just stole this lick and that lick. And I went and listened to it. And I told her, yeah, well, I just stole this lick and that lick off of your version. So, there's nothing new.
That's awesome. Well, it is. It's a lot of recycling of like tips and like riffs and motifs and finding your way to expand upon it. Like the whole bit of that what's that Indiana bebop thing throughout jazz and like that. I guess that's the individual's interpretation and the voice of how they say it is what makes them.
I don't think there's any musician or any singer who would not admit to, stealing a lick note for note. If they like it, if they could pull it off. I mean, that's just, it's stupid not to, mine those treasures.
That's very true. And I think very well said. To mine those treasures.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like it is.
I already read that somewhere.
So what was mining treasures or else? Well, Tracy, I'm excited for when you come out with your jazz record.
All right. Well, don't hold your breath. Or it might be another 40 years anyway.
Well, whenever it comes out, I'm excited to hear it. And I really, really appreciate your time.
Well, great. And keep up your work. I when I can't do this anymore, I'm going to find a way to use music, in another positive way.
Was it? Well, I definitely think with your ability to speak to people, you can totally do that within any way that you find, because like going down your whole career, I'm like, oh, she's so cool and inspiring. Then like hearing that one,
I just love you.
hearing that one bit about working with those kids, it's like that's.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.